Well, if you're struggling to make ends meet in Canada, you can largely thank these two. And come April 1st, they're going to make it even worse for you. Environment and Climate Change Minister Stephen Guilbeault here, having been in an interview, being asked, well, why would you let those people in Atlantic Canada off on the carbon tax? Isn't it important that we put an effect on climate change? Isn't this a thing? Well, he was asked this, and the inconsistency of this is just fantastic.
Can you explain to Canadians watching, Minister, why it was okay to pause the price on carbon for home heating oil, but not for this upcoming increase as of April 1st?
So the very reason for putting a price on pollution, and it's been done before, not just for climate change, but for other environmental challenges, is that you want to incentivize change in behavior for companies, industrial organizations, but also individuals. What we found out with home heating oil is that the vast majority, in fact, of people who are still using home heating oil in Canada, and there are more people in my home province of Quebec than in all of Atlantic Canada, for example, that still use it, but tend to be lower to middle income Canadians who don't have the money to make the switch for less polluting form of home heating oil, home heating, which is why we decided to put a pause specifically on this, because home heating oil is the most...
It had nothing to do with the fact that it was largely liberal zones, liberal areas, ridings, where it looked like in the polling they were going to lose their seats. Now, of course, this is a backpedal. They don't want to limit the carbon tax. In fact, in April 1st, they're going to be increasing the carbon tax, which is going to put a lot more of these people out. But if it's in a liberal region, well, you might get a break. Anyway, let him continue here.
It's expensive, it's the most inefficient, and it's the most polluting way of heating your home.
And I do take your point, Minister, that as far as volume goes, there are more of those homes outside of Atlantic Canada, but as a portion of the types of heating that's used, it's far greater in Atlantic Canada than it is in other parts of the country. And the Atlantic MP surrounding the Prime Minister, when he made that announcement, I think speaks to that fact. But at this point in time, given the affordability struggles, like you highlight many of those using home heating oil are facing, would it not be worth considering pressing pause in this instance?
No.
Because people are hurting. Wouldn't it be wouldn't you want to consider putting a pause on it? Because you said those people were poor, middle class people. What about all the rest of them?
No, it wouldn't, because we can't put a pause on climate change.
Oh, we can't put a pause
on it. What
on
Pierre never talks about is the fact that people, right now, 8 out of 10 Canadians, families, get more money back than they pay in carbon pricing. So the richest among us don't, the people who pollute the most, but 8 out of 10 Canadian families, and that has been...
The richest among us pollute, they're going to be the ones who are going to be affected the most. Okay, and that's the whole idea, is to change their behavior. Now, does that change their behavior? I don't know, let's ask Bill Gates this.
A new study shows the world's richest 1% account for more carbon emissions than the poorest 66%. What responsibility do you think the super rich have to act in a sustainable way as we see so many of these climate impacts falling on the backs of the world's poor?
Yeah, so, I spend about $9 million a year, so I'm buying sustainable aviation fuel and to cancel out my footprint. I wouldn't claim in any way, that means I can leave the problem alone, because I should use my skills and money to drive innovation, so that this problem doesn't just get solved for my emissions, it gets solved for everyone's emissions.
So I don't need to stop doing what I'm doing. This behavioral change tax isn't going to change my behavior, which in this interview, 66% of what is this? A new study shows the world's richest 1% account for more carbon emissions than the poorest 66%. But who's getting affected by this the most? The poor. The poor are the ones that are going to get hurt the most with these carbon tax measures. Of course, the rich aren't going to change their behavior. They're just going to offset it all onto the poor. Now, Thomas Sowell, a tenured professor from Harvard University, economist and writer, says the welfare state is the oldest con game in the world. First, you take people's money away quietly, and then you give some of it back flamboyantly. And then you trick them into believing, essentially, that they're getting a good deal out of this. Now, this video, I found it on Vesper's Twitter. I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can go share it around. This is actually from the last time they hiked the carbon tax, and it turns out nobody's getting a rebate back.
The price of carbon saw its largest hike yet this weekend since Liberals introduced the climate measure, jumping from $50 per ton of emissions to $65. But the Prime Minister insists most Canadians will still be better off.
We also bring in a climate action incentive that right now more than compensates for the added costs of the carbon tax.
More.
So how could this carbon tax increase impact you? Will you really be better off? Yves Giroux is the Parliamentary Budget Officer who joins me now. Hello, sir. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
But you did a broader economic analysis, and this looks at how an increase in the price of carbon seeps through the economy and the economic dampening effect it can have, especially in fossil fuel-reliant economies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador. What's the net out of that? How does that affect Canadians overall by 2030?
So this is expected to have significant impact on the economy as a whole, but also on specific sectors. So once we take that into consideration, we find that most households will be worse off with a carbon tax than they would be without a carbon tax.
Okay, I know you don't like to necessarily wade into the political argument, but I just want to help in settling, because since your report came out, we've seen the government say people will be better off, or most people will be better off. They'll get back more than they pay in. This is true based on the fiscal analysis, and when the Conservatives in particular say households will be worse off, that is also true based on the broader economic analysis. So they're both kind of saying different things, but both being correct?
That's one such case, exactly. It depends at the angle at which you look at the issue. If you look just at the money in, money out, then it's true that most households will be better off. But if you also look at the broader impact the carbon tax is having and will continue to have on the economy, then most households will be worse off.
So this is something that I've been talking about. I'm going to get back to the rest of this video. I've been talking about this for some time on the channel. It's the snowballing effect of this carbon tax as it rolls through the economy and it makes prices go up, because I mean, nobody's going to just pay the tax and then assume all liability for that. No, they're going to pass this on to the consumers. It's going to put people out of business, so people will lose their jobs. The prices will go up. So yes, the long effect of the carbon tax going up, or just even being there in the first place, that snowball effect is going to actually make things much worse for Canadians. So yeah, you pay a little bit in, you get a little bit back. None of that takes effect or none of that is calculated. None of this other stuff is calculated in the Liberals' talking points when they're referring to it in that sense. Now, I love this bit here from Marty Up North. He says, if you buy something and return it to the store, whatever reason, you get a refund. If you want to buy an item, but you're hesitating, the store manager might entice you with a discount. If you're accidentally paid too much for a service, the provider will give you a rebate. When the Trudeau Liberals tell you that they're giving you a carbon tax rebate, they're actually admitting to you that you paid too much. You're not getting all of your carbon tax back. That would be a refund. You're just getting a small rebate. Now, this is on the floor during this was the debate on they were debating the carbon tax to no, there's no confidence in government. Obviously, this was voted down, but during the debate, this one MP came up and made a perfectly good statement about this.
Dr. Thomas Sowell, a renowned economist, has stated, the welfare state is the oldest con game in the world. First, you take people's money away quietly, then you give some of it back to them flamboyantly. It's amazing how that is reminiscent of what we're facing right now. They're taking more and more of our money, and yet when they give it back in a portion of what they take, they celebrate it like they're doing some great favor to the Canadian citizen. That's right. It's like you work hard, you get $10 in one hand, and all of a sudden, the Prime Minister comes along and his government, they grab that $10 bill out of your hand that you work so hard for, run it through the bureaucratic spin cycle machine, do grand announcements, proclaim they're going to roll back the tides and heal the oceans and bring temperatures down, and then at the end of the day, they come back to you and put a $5 bill in your hand and want you to celebrate What a great favor they did for you. You have fallen behind. You've spent money, and you have nothing to show for it but a grandiose virtue signal, big announcements, and less money in your pocket to take care of your family's needs and your family's priorities. It's time Canadians had the opportunity to express what kind of Canada they want in the future and what direction they want to go.
And that's not it. That's not as far as it's going to go. This is actually going to go up so much higher. So 23% coming April 1st, and it's going to go up even more.
And then I just wanted to look ahead, if you could, for a moment, Minister, to what the future looks like, because you know that this will form a big part of the political debate going forward and heading into the next election. Right now, the plan that your government laid out post-2019, the 2019 election, got us to 2030 and the targets that you set out to 2030, and that is when the price on carbon will reach $170 a ton. Do you intend for that price to continue to go up, since you do see this as such an integral part of your climate policy beyond 2030 to help Canada reach its 2050 target?
So we haven't made a decision on that. We've started consultation to prepare the next phase of emission reduction, so post-2030 in Canada, in fact, going to 2035. Those consultations are ongoing. Canada will need to make a determination by next year, as per our United Nations commitment, to set those new targets for 2035. We will need to do that by next year, by 2025. There's no decision that has been made yet, other than we will continue increasing the price on pollution. But also for people who are watching,
well, I'll let you link. I'll let you hit the link in the description down below if you want to watch the rest of this. Now, Stephen Guilbeault does talk about it going way out into the future, because essentially this is what's going to happen. They are going to go way out into the future, and they're not going to stop. This is his MO, and he says this here.
Use probably by 2060, more or less. So 1987 to 2060. That's the time. That's the kind of time frame we're looking at to tackle an issue like climate change. Use 2060.
So if you had any plans moving forward, well, that's where we're going. 2060 increases, annually, twice annually. We'll see how far it goes before people just say this is enough. It looks like they're probably not going to get past the next election. The only one standing in the way of this one is, of course, Pierre Poilievre, with his promise that he's going to axe the tax. Is that something that you think he will do? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. And as always, of course, we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.